2008 was a very active year for tornadoes. With 1,692 tornadoes recorded throughout the year, it was the third most active year in history, since tornadoes were actively recorded starting in 1950. Only 2011 and 2004 had more. In May, the second EF5 since the EF scale was launched in 2007 was recorded in Parkersburg, Iowa. I experienced only my second tornado warning ever in August of 2008 while I was on my first day at a new school. I remember as the storm approached, my class was outside for gym. The winds out ahead of the storm were carrying the smell of manure from somewhere many miles away, and that's when my teacher knew something bad was going to happen and ushered everyone into the school basement. But this video isn't about that day in August, or even about the Parkersburg EF5. It's about how 2008 started off with a violent bang that has kind of been forgotten about today. Every 4 years in early February, Americans in several states vote for the candidates that they want to elect for president and other important positions. The voting closes on a Tuesday, hence it is called Super Tuesday. 2008 was one of these important election years, and this race in particular was going to be a big one. It would shape the future of the country. But for many people living in the lower Great Lakes region and the southeastern U.S., they never could have foreseen that that day would shape the future of their lives forever in a very different way. This is the story of the Super Tuesday tornado outbreak, and in particular of the EF3 tornado which struck the towns of Castellian Springs and Lafayette in north-central Tennessee. Although it was not the strongest tornado of the event, it was the deadliest. And yet, it also comes with some stories of remarkable survival. On February 4th, a low-pressure system situated itself over the lower Great Plains, contributing to record-breaking high temperatures across the southeast. Some places in Alabama reached up to over 80 degrees Fahrenheit in February. Memphis, Tennessee recorded dew points into the mid-60s. The air was certainly warm and moist enough to fire up some chaos. Meanwhile, a strong cold front advanced east alongside the low, and a jet stream directing winds east created intense wind shear by clashing with surface winds out of the Gulf of Mexico. The warm air in place generated Cape values well over 1,000 joules per kilogram of air, which combined with the extreme wind shear was more than enough to sustain violent supercells and strong tornadoes all across the region. On the morning of February 5th, the SPC placed a high risk, the first one issued in February since 1998, over a large portion of Arkansas. A few hours later, it was expanded to cover portions of southeast Missouri, southern Illinois, western Kentucky and Tennessee, and northwestern Mississippi. In the early morning hours, a squall line formed, stretching from Texas north to Missouri. It was expected that supercell thunderstorms would fire up in front of the line. However, a cap, which is a layer of warm air preventing surface heating from reaching the atmosphere to interact with cool air to create thunderstorms, blanketed the area, and it took longer for the supercells to develop than expected. Eventually, the cap was broken through, and the first tornado was reported in Arkansas around 3:30 p.m. Around 8 p.m., a supercell that had originated in Mississippi produced an extremely violent EF4 tornado in Hardin County, Tennessee. Damage included flattening a well-built metal-framed church building down to the slab. After this tornado lifted, the supercell crossed over downtown Nashville. Due to pockets of downburst winds interfering with rotation, the storm mercifully spared Nashville from a tornado. But the towns beyond Nashville were not so lucky. Around 10 p.m., a tornado touched down to the southwest of the town of Castellian Springs. The tornado started off weak, snapping branches off of trees and causing minor roof damage to homes. But as it entered the town, it strengthened into an EF3. Mobile homes were totally destroyed. Cinderblock foundation homes were swept clean. The town's post office was flattened. A historic inn dating from 1828 called Wynwood lost its roof and the second floor was totally destroyed. In Castellian Springs, 85 homes were destroyed, 7 people were killed, and 14 injured. The tornado weakened but continued on to rural areas north of Hartsville at EF2 strength. Near Hartsville, a natural gas plant was struck by the tornado and caused a significant fire. 2 people were killed in this section of the tornado's path. The tornado then crossed into Macon County and leveled the town of Lafayette, regaining EF3 strength as it ripped apart a poorly anchored brick home and several churches. 170 homes in Lafayette were destroyed, and 13 people were killed, with further 44 injured. Debris from Lafayette was found over 70 miles to the northeast in Sano, Kentucky. Macon County had a big logging industry that was totally wrecked by the tornado, causing over $1 million in damages to trees alone. Schools in Macon County were closed for a full 2 weeks after the tornado. After leaving Macon County, the tornado crossed into Kentucky and maintained EF3 strength as it tore through several more towns, but there were no more deaths or significant injuries. The tornado finally lifted after being on the ground for 50 miles across 2 states and causing over $100 million in damage, $78 million of it in Macon County, Tennessee alone. It had a peak width of half a mile wide, and sadly, it cost 22 people their lives. It was the deadliest tornado in Tennessee in almost a century, and the deadliest tornado in the U.S. as a whole since November 2005. Tennessee governor at the time, Phil Bredesen, famously remarked, "It looks like God took a Brillo pad and scrubbed the ground," while viewing the damage from the air. In the days following the tornado, a remarkable story of survival came out of Castalian Springs. Kyson Stowell, just an 11-month-old baby, was thrown out of his home by the tornado and tossed into a field over 500 feet away, with no injuries beyond some minor scrapes. Unfortunately, his mother Carrie was killed by the tornado. Kyson was called a miracle baby. Other amazing stories came out of what is usually a time of despair. The Wynwood Inn, a National Historic Landmark dating to 1828, had its second floor destroyed by the tornado. In order to retain the site's historic status, the volunteer workers who maintained the inn had to find a way to track down acceptable vintage replica logs without any blueprints or even photo documentation to go off of in order to restore the building. It took more than 4 years, but Wynwood was fully rebuilt, and even more was learned about the building's history in the process. You can still visit it today, and it now runs as a full-fledged museum. Ray Carter, director of the Hartsville Pike Church of Christ, was woken up early in the morning on February 6th by a firefighter calling him to ask to open the church to all the people who had lost their homes in the tornado. The church supported people for several weeks while they found more permanent places to stay, and church members came together and worked around the clock to provide food and comfort to the displaced people and help clean up debris left behind in the tornado's wake. Carter credits the tornado with bringing the community together and making it a better and safer place to live in the long run. The Castalian Springs tornado was just one of 87 tornadoes which struck the southeastern United States that day, including 5 EF4s. To this day, the Super Tuesday outbreak holds the record for most tornadoes in one day in February. 57 people were killed, 31 of them in Tennessee, making it the deadliest tornado outbreak since the May 31st, 1985 Ohio-Pennsylvania tornado outbreak, and the deadliest in Tennessee since the 1974 super outbreak. Along with the tornadoes, the storm system produced damaging winds up to 85 miles per hour, up to 4.5-inch hail, and caused significant flooding. All of these factors combined to total over $1 billion in damages. Although it was a crazy event in 2008, today the Super Tuesday outbreak has been massively overshadowed by other outbreaks, especially the 2011 super outbreak, which took place over largely the same area. It was really hard for me to find information from a source that wasn't Wikipedia, which is why this video might seem short and lacking details compared to my Plainfield video and even my Edmonton video. I couldn't even find a full list of victims like I did easily with Plainfield and Edmonton. So I guess we'll just have a moment of silence for Carrie Stowell, the other 21 victims of the Castalian Springs tornadoes, and all the 57 victims of the outbreak as a whole. Thank you.